Hi everyone. Today I've decided to do a book review on something that is quite uh, controversial, and you know that my channel is filled with controversial subjects. So this book is called The Black Runa, and I think I pronounced it correctly by the author Stephen Edred Flowers, who has produced this booklet for the Order of the Trapezoid of the Temple of Set. And the book was published and gathered and put together during the period of 1985 to 1989. And you can see the symbol of the trapezoid with the inverted pentagram in it. Okay, so the book is very different than a normal book because there's a lot of chapters in there that I will be addressing. The book is also, as you can see, only 504 copies of the Black Runa, and it's been printed, and this is number 311 that I'm working on. And of course, all the abbreviations, which really is not so important right now. And the reason I start this book, this review, I'll give you a little bit of a background, is I think the title says it all. I think the title speaks for itself. What you're needing to take note of is to keep your head about you, keep your wits about you when I go through this material. You may have to go through it a few times. It's also going to be a bit lengthy because I'm bringing up other aspects as well of the book itself. And I think what you'll notice is it's very much like the Russian doll, because there's a lot of little snippets of things that come into it. And the reason I chose it is because of the trapezoid that's in it. So if you're not understanding what the trapezoid is, I'll stop you right now, and I'll tell you to please go and revisit. If you've done it before, do it again. If you don't understand this book review, please, I would want for you to revisit the video Deep Stuff to Beyond Thunderdome. It is a very extensive explanation of the torus and the symbology of the trapezoid within it. For any of you who are completely unfamiliar with what I'm trying to explain, I've got here in front of me a little crystal. This shape in itself is a trapezoid. If you turn it in a specific way, any other way, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. If you look at it from directly in front of you, this is the shape of the tiles inside of the torus. So you're looking at it, it would look pretty much like the scales of a snake as well. If you're turning it on the side, it will look very much like a trapezoid. So this is the shape I'm talking about. So keep this in mind. I'll take a picture of it, and there you go. You can see a little bit more. Okay. So, okay, why this book? Well, the book came to me, like most material comes to me when there's information that needs to be shed light on. Excuse me. And I've got the book here as well as the website, which I'll be addressing. I don't know how some of the work on the website is copyrighted, so I'll only address what I can and what is not copyrighted, and I will give credit where credit is due with the references at the bottom of the video. So it is about the manipulation of the trapezoid, using the trapezoid to alter time and space continuum. But before you go off and start to wonder why I'm saying time and space, I will explain later. So I will share with you my thoughts first before I start. So in simple metaphysical terms, we're looking at the backseat drivers, or the Ministry of Magic, in face to face. And those who control and hold the torus in place by literally anchoring via this symbol, the symbology, the torus in place. So much like the Kabbalah, who have also used the tree of Sephiroth to do the same. We are looking at the other side of it as well, the ones that are actually doing the job, the actual ones. And most of the power always lies in the outside of the circle and never within the center, because normally the center or the inner circle is the one that it's the circle that's the most targeted, but the ones on the outside are doing the biggest work. So we're looking at the torus through the masters or the worshipful masters of the dark crystal, as he makes himself known to be, or the dark flame. The last one was a fat and ugly old man who was doing atrocious work. He pretty much resembled Aleister Crowley in that regard. And so with his cronies trying to escape the contracts that they have made with the spirits or demons inside of the field, encased within the rotting vessels of a man, who, much like in the appearance, is, even though he's fat, he's also hollow. That is an allegory of the entity that is within the form of the initial first dark crystal, or that is how he is known. He was known to be. Okay, and so we're also looking at the dimensional manipulation via the torus. Remember that the information about the torus as the outer ring, always in motion, made up of black crystal technology, as I've said before, obsidian. This book actually brings the information in for you. It also references a lot on John Dee using polished obsidian, and at the time they didn't know what it was called, so they thought it was from meteorite initially, like most crystals are. And the luminiferous ether that penetrates through the tiles of the torus model, metaphysically speaking, and then becomes the artificial light because it is secondhand information. And that is the difference between what the rest of everyone, what they do, versus what we know. I'm talking to the spirited people, that there is a way to be within the original authentic energy that comes to you. Okay. We don't need to be magicians or create magical rituals in order for ourselves to actually exist within our spirited presence or existence. And as the light is then penetrating through the crystal or the dark crystal or the plate of the torus or the trapezoid or the diamond, however you want to put it, let me just show you again so that you understand what I mean. The shape, flat, is what it looks like. Once luminiferous ether comes through it, you start to see the angles of it. You would see light coming through it. When you perceive the light from this perspective, from where you are, you would see the light as second-hand light or artificial form of light. That is, if you are locking yourself into belief systems, that is why you will then see what has been fed into your consciousness, so that you are then seeing the patterns that they teach you to see, such as runes, such as languages. English is not the language that everyone was meant to communicate with. Okay, but it is the second-hand language that was taught to many people, many nations in this realm. So this is based on ancient technology that forms part of the construct, not simulation. Someone asked me a while ago if I'm disputing that this realm is a simulation, and I say yes, because if it was a simulation, it would be a copy of another world. And what you're looking at is basically a construction based on conscious light feeding into light. And therefore, there is no actual pattern of a copy or a replica of a previous world. You're looking at a continuously changing frequency within the realm, within the system overlay. Okay, So that is based on that. If you don't understand that, please go back again to the deep stuff beyond Thunderdome. There's a lot of information in there. You need to go through it very slowly. It took a long time to put together, just much like this material that I'm doing right now. And so those who said that a man is dreaming or God is dreaming this world into being, maybe they were half right, except they were not saying which specific God it was or where the source came from. And those who have built the system using the original confinements and constraints of the parasitic element of existence, that means, let me explain to you the parasitic element in this regard. When I say parasitic element, I'm saying that there are certain entities or people or beings or species that require for another species to become captured by their light. So you're looking at the lanternfish as a very good example of the parasitic element, because essentially it becomes your predator. If you become trapped by that light that it lures you with. So you're looking at that frequency. The backstory of the torus, remember what is the torus? In simple, the realm in which you live is manufactured by way of conscious thinking or projectionism and influences. Metaphysically speaking, you endure this when you enter into this realm, thinking that it appears to look like it is a world which some worship and some call it Gaia. Some call it Earth. Some have made religions out of their findings and, as I said, blinded by the light, while others have withdrawn into the back. I'm reading from my own notes, which I have made, okay? It's a lot of material, so I cannot have it all in my head one shot. If I could, I would have. Okay, so the torus, metaphysically speaking, is a constructed model for the system overlay. The system overlay requires feeding from the torus itself to keep functioning. And now prior to that, I've done the video on the breaking of the ring, which was based on the actual lesser key of Solomon, where, again, the trapezoid, the plates, the trapezoid is being worshipped. One of many tiles of the torus is worshipped or cordoned off as a domain for worshipping and using it as a form of trapping to hold spirits in place, giving them all agencies, and that is how you find demons. Okay, if you strip the demon from the agency in which it was locked into, if you take the spirit out of the stone that was put into it, it becomes just a person who has lived formerly as someone who had a spirit before. Okay, and so that is what you're looking at. Nothing is completely new and foreign to this. This is a closed system, okay, with the exception of the luminiferous ether that comes into the torus, lights up the inside, gives belief to it every day as you believe that you live in a space where there's sun, moon, and stars. You then form part of the system overlay, which is crystal-like. Crystallinum as the model from Aristotle. I will put the information or the image for you to remember. It's very important that you get the concept of this metaphysically speaking. This is not to teach you anything foreign. I mean, you already know what I'm speaking about. It's also not a lecture. It's just a book review, but I'm giving you the background to it so you understand. With the exception that the system overlay is cracked right now, which is why there's a lot more luminiferous ether coming in. And of course, the celestial bodies are also much more amplified than they usually would be. So, okay. Now, one of those tiles is called a trapezoid if it has dimension to it, which came first. I'm giving you the sort of ground plans for the construct and the system that was directly locking itself into it. Okay, so it just depends on how much belief you foster in terms of this. If you were part of the Temple of Set, you would believe that the system overlay is based on the findings of the trapezoid, which you're sort of halfway right, but the way that you're doing it is through other means of understanding, as as you'll see eventually. Okay, so the shape as a trapezoid, why is it so important? Because that has been seen, that has been witnessed, that's been seen. So the information about the torus and the system overlay is actually not new. If you do recall, like I said, Aristotle also discovered the system overlay, but he called it the crystallinum. So very much this is a model that has been, let's say, discarded, just like very much like they're trying to discard and shut down metaphysics, which is why I'm fighting very hard to keep things in a metaphysical perspective, which is not based on witchcraft, is not based on magical thinking. It's based on the connection within yourself, your spirit, your soul, your mind, and your body in alignment, and with the connection of your spirit connecting with the original creative force or great spirit, as I call it, because light attracts light. Light connects with light. So if you cannot line yourself up with that, you will not be able to connect with great spirit. Because your spirit, if you have one, is made up of light. Okay, you get different types of light though, so it's up to you to refine your frequency. Okay, and the information that I'm giving to you is not because I'm trying to help you to save the world around you, because it is not savable. You cannot save the world. You cannot save everyone. You are not a Messiah. You are not a Jesus or a Buddha or a whatever hero. Okay, those things do not exist. Those things are set up so that you could become part of a crucifixion process for these entities that are working through the torus. So once you know the information, you are able to understand yourself more. You are able to understand who you are through self-care, self-nurture, being kind to yourself, following what it is that you are meant to follow within yourself, your true self, and through love as well. And while you're in this process, you're able to access the path to go through the entire system, and back to where you come from originally, without having to go through the recycle bin or the washing machine or whatever you want to call it. So you can do that by going into yourself, or the other way around. It's up to you. I prefer, like I've always said, and I'm bringing it back up again, that I prefer to go through the way that I have worked on, which is into myself. Okay, my body is not coming with me, so there is no immortality in your physical form. If you have been thinking about that, you're on the wrong channel. Now, there's some very interesting parts in this book where there's a mention about focusing on, let me see, focusing on, I just needed to check if I'm recording, because there's been some weird thingies, obviously, where they focus on the dimensions of the trapezoid, but they call it objective universe and subjective universe, and I'll explain that as well. It just explains to you how they work with this. This could also be understood as the Merkaba. So those of you who are focusing on the Merkaba, it is the same thing. You're just going to be spinning inside of something like this. You're never going to leave. You're going to just come back again and just repeat the same stuff all over again. Was the information secret to begin with? Yes, it was. I mean, because it's just come out now. And in the 80s, it was like rich, busy. There's maybe 2 videos that I found on the Order of the Trapezoid, and most of the videos have been done based on this website only. So I think that the material that I'm working with is actually very new. Like I said, the way that the book came to me was quite remarkable. We'll leave it there. And so you're looking at a secret society where secret technology is being used through covert, occult actions. Understand torus dynamics carefully, and I'll give it to you again. The torus itself is the container in which the system overlay functions or is part of it. The system overlay is also the ring or key of the lesser key of Solomon. These guys basically hack the torus field, to put it like that, but not all the way through, because I think if they did, we'd have a bigger problem. You can't hack the entire field. You can only hack some parts of it or small plates of the skin of the torus, much like I've said before, and I'll show you again. Societies can claim these tiles, basically use it for whatever purpose they want to. The Kabbalah has taken one part of the tile. Religions create their own little parts of the tile. Some cults are bigger. They take a whole tile. Tiles are massive, okay? They are massive. And they are not literal, okay? So you need to understand that this is not a literal thing. I'm explaining this in a metaphysical way so that it is a perception of what the frequency looks like. So based on that, that is why I'm sharing it with you. I'm also not trying to shove this down your throat either. So it is entirely up to you to decide how you investigate this in your own manner. So yeah, many millions of cults are actively working in the back, trying to work through this trapezoid thing. It's very focused on technology as well, hence the black screens that we work through. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, I said it was black or dark. It gives the appearance of as obsidian. That's about the best example that you can find on it, with luminiferous ether penetrating through it, which is the secondary version or second-hand version of light, which then is essentially also artificial light. It is a artificial light. Okay, so on the Black Runa, because I'm assuming this is Nordic or Scandinavian. Rina. Okay, so on the Black Rune, the book is basically like a giant sales pitch for the first 2 or 3 chapters. That's what I found from it. It was very difficult to go through because it was incredibly intricate and detailed. It was supposedly written for the general public, and I'll get it for you in the introduction here. So let's see if you can see this clearly. So is designed to allow the general public some access to the genuine ideological and magical world of the Order of the Trapezoid, which I'm saying is essentially a giant sales pitch so that you will just buy into the left-hand path, which is just another glorified opposite side or opposition side to the right-hand path, which is just duality all over again. However, one path and the other path will always try to outpath one another, sadly. Okay, so the Order of the Trapezoid is the secret order inside of the Temple of Set. The book Black Runa is the introduction to it. This book is there for the doorway into the Temple of Set and the Order of the Trapezoid. And this book must be understood in this way, because not because I said so, but because the author explains it in such a way. So before I explain the Order of the Trapezoid, I must add that that the material of this book was written in 1985 to 1989. So there's a lot of information from that time and before that time where there was a lot of speculation on previous war events such as Second World War, the Germans, etc., etc. So this is not going to be a political discussion. I refuse to let it go to that direction. I will bring up things that are things that we need to focus on, that we need to be mindful of. And so while you're looking at this page, you're also seeing what I'm talking about. Okay, introduction talks about the articles that have been written with respect to the northern tradition and magic and initiations from the unique angle of the left-hand path. Okay, Stephen Edred Flowers, the author, makes reference of his involvement within the Order of the Trapezoid when it began with him connecting with Michael Aquino at that time. Okay, Michael Aquino, for those of you who have forgotten who he is, again, go back to the last video, like I've just mentioned, but I'll just refresh your memory. He's written a book called Mind Wars, and in the book he's explained how magical thinking happens and how people are being programmed through magical thinking, which you will see in this book are examples of, and how powerful the focus can be. He learned about the Order of the Shining Trapezoid that was founded in November 11, 1983. Getting involved with Michael Aquino as the head of the Temple of Set had given him some advantageous experiences, as he explains. The Temple of Set is predominantly focused on Odinism from the Germanic occultism. Odinism is the focus on Norse beliefs. So as soon as he was accepted as a Sethian first degree, because he had to be initiated into the Temple of Set, as you can see here, he became knighted. And when they throw the knight thing in, it's very much then creates a chivalry aspect to gentlemen, okay, which is just another, it's what they do, okay. It makes you feel better about going into something that's not good for you. That's my opinion. Okay, so practical and academically, he was quite exceptional. This is now Stephen Flowers, was exceptional with his research work, and also he was very much in tune with a lot of esoteric information at the time. So Stephen also says, or the author also says, as soon as he was accepted, he just simply gave all of what he knew in terms of his wisdom and his research and studies to the Temple of Set for the order, and much gratitude was made to Betty Ford and Michael Aquino, who at the time was both Grand Master of the Order of the Trapezoid and the High Priest of the Temple of Set, for their generous reception of him and his work into the Order of the Trapezoid. Okay, on a side note, obviously he knew a lot on Germanic esotericism, so he was useful to be knighted, I suppose, and it happened quite quickly. Betty Ford, President Ford, I think that should tell you by itself. All right. All the material, all the material that he had written, that he had sent to Michael Aquino, had been published without him knowing about it. I'm assuming he was probably so overwhelmed by everything that he didn't realize that it was being published. He says so in the first chapter. Actually, he says he was recognized as someone who was quite adept with the information that he had, and Michael Aquino had published it without him knowing about it, but had in turn made him a famous adept in the Temple of Set. Stephen Edward Flowers received his degree of philosophy in 1984 at the University of Texas in Austin. So that same year, he was recognized as priesthood in the priesthood of Set and master of the Order of the Trapezoid, where the ritual events had taken place at the Set V Conclave in the Santa Cruz, California, done via speakerphone. And then at the time, there was quite a big deal about speakerphones. And he makes a comment there that he was marveling at the technology and thought it was magical to have the ritual of the initiation taking place via speakerphone. I actually think indirect is actually really quite a cheap thing. Anyway, that's just my thought. So I suppose the speakerphone with the high priest talking on the other end to you about how wonderful you are would probably be blowing your brain, into magnificence. And so then later on, after he was recognized into the Grand Mastery of the Order of the Trapezoid, and Michael Aquino assumed title Grand Master Emeritus at the time. The book called Black Runa, or Runa, makes reference to the word black as the left-hand path, and Runa reference to a word which supposedly the author had heard when he was being initiated in 1988. The author writes that the runa means for him, on a personal level, a sense of the hidden and the core depth of the scientific self and the outermost reaches of beyond the limits of the cosmos. Okay, quote, end quote. He claims that out of the darkness comes light, and he equates it to the first light, which is seen with Odin's one eye. What he does not understand fully is really that he glimpsed the first emulation of the secondary light, which is not the true light, like I've said before in the first part of this video, much like the same aspect of seeing the first light as the reflection of artificial light when the letters are formed to create words, or when you're looking at yourself in a black screen or a black mirror and there's a face in that mirror and you think, you marvel at that black at that screen that reflects that face back to you. You marvel at your own reflection, which is then an artificial reflection of yourself. I hope that makes sense. And then you switch the screen on, or the black mirror switches back on, and the light shines through it, and the picture then becomes actual digital image of yourself, and then you see the same thing. It is yet then the third version of yourself. And that is basically what they're looking at and what they're worshipping. And another thing in the background that I need to explain to you is everything that is discussed here, based on the information that is being brought out here, is being exposed in such a way that those who know this channel, when it is being spoken about here, it breaks down the information in such a way that it clarifies it for you. And that is how it is, and that is the rule of this channel. So whatever is here that is being spoken up of is being broken down and clarified. Okay, so back to the light part. On a side note, that when I suppose he made a big research on investigating runes and divinatory tools as divinatory tools, which we know runes are, rune stones. And again, this is not to knock anyone that is using rune stones as a divinatory tool, and not at all. I'm talking about the author's work that explains the Temple of Set and the Order of the Trapezoid itself. I do not even knock and degrade the author. Okay, so this is a completely objective review, analysis on this book and the findings that I've got. It is understood that runes is also based on the first language that is most likely formed when you state deeply or stare deeply into the torus skin, while the ether permeates through it. If you do not have the understanding of this, like I said, please visit the Beyond the Thunderdome, where I've given examples on language. You'll see I've posted images there as well. The booklet is meant to be introduction to the mysteries of the left-hand path, which is just, as I said, a polarization of just the right-hand path. I'm not saying that it's the same. I'm not saying that they are the same, but it is dualistic. Okay, and with dualism comes Hegelianism. And research those words. The Order of the Trapezoid is thus magical concept, magical body that exists beyond limitations of time and space. Quote, end quote. The following aspects on how they observe time and space is based on the magical functionality of their model, or AKA, as said, the worship of the trapezoid with many dimensions to it. This material comes directly from Michael Aquino from the previous book called Mind War, like I've said before, in which they make use of the subliminal contexts and projections through influence into certain components, such as the following: the objective universe and the subjective universe, or the world order. That is how it's mentioned here. This can be, of course, controlled when you understand that consciousness as well as subconsciousness can influence your life Nothing new, of course, but I'll explain it in a little bit more deeper so that you understand. Understand the following, which I'm citing, and I'm citing from this book a lot, okay? So that we understand and review it. The objective universe is natural cosmos or world order. This is what they say, okay? They say the objective universe is natural cosmos or world order. This is essentially mechanical or organic, i.e., it is ruled by certain predictable laws manifested as a time and space continuum. All right, that is the objective universe. The objective universe, including laws governing, can be equated with nature as well as within God in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Okay, so again, what I've just said, the Kabbalah is put inside of here, along with the Temple of Set, along with the Freemasons, along with whatever else is there that helps the people focused on this one little top of the pyramid. That's all you can see. That's all they work with. They don't show you everything else that's on the side that's running down its sides. You can't see everything else on that side. You're only forced to look at this little thingy in front of you. This is how the system operates, currently speaking. But not for long, because the luminiferous ether is highlighting up a lot of tiles all at the same time. So a lot of things are happening to a lot of people in very different ways, very unique and individual different ways. Okay, some are good and some are not good. Okay. Okay, so they put God into that thing as well. All right, that's basically what they're saying, is he also calls this natural science, and that is absolutely not natural science, but that's his interpretation of how he's understanding what he was taught through this system. He then postulates that the subjective universe is the world of any sentient entity within the universe. He also says that there are many subjective universes because there are many people or beings. Okay. So this is where the whole belief of multiverse comes from. Then he says that subjective universe is a particular manifestation of consciousness within the universe, and experience of objective universe is indirect information concerning that it comes from subjective. End quote. Here comes my commentary on it. The side note, please take note. I critique that because I will explain to you in a metaphysical term. First of all, time and space does not exist like what you see in Star Trek or NASA fake footage. Time is relative to form, and form has a lifespan. Okay? Space is a container or a measurement for ether. That already in itself throws out time and space continuum. All right, we are not in Star Trek. Thinking, projecting, and influencing people by way of the ideas influence people to influence their immediate realities or realm dynamics. Next point. Realm dynamics, these are my points, okay? Realm dynamics needs to be understood with the model of the torus in mind, or not, it's up to you. However, for every action, I will simplify it. For every action, there is a reaction. Every cause has an effect. And for every action, there is a reaction which can be subjective to an object. All right. People who revolt or create revolutions are reactive and subjective due to feeling that they were objectified. Understand? The realm is thus based on nature, mechanics, and physical matter, material, while there is also the spirit and ether within its entirety. To project the influence into the reality, ideas are actions or thoughts that can influence or subject objects or people or the material realm. You are the objects. You are either objects or objectified as an object or subjected to a system of beliefs, not the other way around. What they've done was they've swapped it around, and I'm giving it to you the right way. So if you choose not to be any of these, then you must take control over your consciousness, which is you, which is how you think, your soul and your spirit, which is how your soul interacts with what is with around you, and then feeds back into you, your spirit, which is how your soul, you then line up to your spirit. It is just how it works. And you change yourself, and that which surrounds you changes with you. Okay. His example of objective and subjective universe is, to some degree, correct, but also incorrect. Around you is influence, that which is subjected to you, or you become subjected to it. This objective part is how you hold yourself with regards to it, that determines where you stand in terms of being objectified or subjected to. You determine this by way of how you hold yourself with regards to it, whatever it is. You also hold the power and the will to determine what you allow yourself to perceive from it. Perception is part of it, which it is the position that you must hold to remain detached from the events and the energies around you, which means you have objective thinking. Not seeing things to be the object of your eyes, old things that you are aware of, okay? Don't get swallowed up by this material. The apple I want becomes the object of my desire. There's an example. Okay, furthermore, there are also perceptions that seems to be amiss, and this is the key that perhaps is useful in determining whether you are being targeted by them sitting in the back of the theater, throwing popcorn at your head while you don't know about it. It's just the way that it's reasoned that it makes it completely the other way around. He says that the universe is subjective, and it's capable of much more stuff. So they use the objectification of what they want, and they put it into there for it to happen. It doesn't work that way. They force it to work that way because they have a lot of massive rituals that have been done and spells to make it that way, to force it that way. You can forcefully screw a round-headed screw into a square hole. You can force it that way. It doesn't mean it'll work. Maybe it'll work for a little bit, but they keep having to do this all the time, so it keeps them busy. We do it the other way around. We do not do it that way. You are in control of yourself. What you think and what you perceive within what you are experiencing around you is not something that you become subjected to. You are the one that is able to project into it or perceive what it is, but you are still able to decide whether you want to become part of its object or subject. That's why he says it's a complex model, the objective universe and the subjective universe. In other words, the universe is split into two parts as well. One is to feed into the other one. It's the yin yang thing. I think we're like beyond that already, a long time ago. So in here he explains this is essentially mechanical and organic. He also says that the objective universe, including the laws governing it, is be equated with nature as well as with God. Okay, so he puts it all into one box. The universe is not objective. It is also not subjective. Humans are either objective or subjective. So it is humanity that is being controlled via objectivity or subjectivity. That is basically the crux of it. This is probably why there's so much delusion that's happening right now, because of the belief that the universe is like Guardians of the Galaxy. There's like tons of little circles and everyone's going through everyone, and every little circle is a little universe, and you all are Smarties in a box, all colorful rainbow colors all over the place. Multiverse does not exist. Multiverse is a flawed idea of having 110 fractaled copies on top of one another. It's incorrect. You have multidimensional realm in which you exist, and this includes the immediate realm dynamics, my circumference around me, and that which that interacts with outside of me. If people key into this belief, then their souls become part of, as he says, quote, humanity's drive to impose structures that subjective universe or people upon the objective universe on people. All artificially created structures, i.e. those made by art or craft, are separate and apart from the natural cosmos. That's what he says, okay? Be those structures pyramids, poems, or political institutions. These are all egregorical images or elements that come from people that have been either subjected or objectified in one way or another, or people that have been in control of their own objective perception in how they observe things and how they interact with it. That is the difference. That is the difference in how we operate versus how he operates and what he explains in his perception, in his idea, his world. So I think that perhaps he was trying to explain it, and he over-explains it so much that it's almost too difficult to actually understand it at some point. Yeah, the left-hand path is based on this inverted reasoning. Not to say that the right-hand path is any different. One just speculates and behaves in the exact opposition or opposite to the other. That is in itself based on polarization, as you know, as I've just mentioned. So based on his findings, he explains that the left-hand path is, in quote, is the first principle of isolated intelligence and is identified as the prince of darkness or the dark crystal or the dark flame. And, quote, isolated intelligence, and that is the end of that quote. My side note is isolated intelligence is the object or the force of influence that can subject you or objectify you. There it is. You are being radiated in some way, shape, or form in any case, wherever you stand. The next part of what he brings up, coming back to that, he says that the Prince of Darkness is the ultimate deity of the left-hand path. If it is, my commentary, if it is the ultimate deity of the left-hand path, and they say it is isolated intelligence, then how is it functioning other than something that is a freestanding entity that is purely designed or supporting a godlike structure for them, which kind of then blows away their belief of subjectivity or enforces their belief in subjectivity and objectivity. Okay, because if there's a master, there must be slaves, and one is either subjective or objectified by the other in one way or another, then their structure works out for them. And they call this entity the Prince of Darkness. As I said, in their work is the ultimate deity of the left-hand path, or the Temple of Set is the initiate. And of course, Temple of Set is borrowed from Egyptian deity Set. Okay. He also says that this principle of the archetype of self is also an element of the non-natural universe, which objectively belongs to the universe itself. Does that not explain what I've just been trying to explain? So in other words, they believe that they stand outside of the mundane and that they are in the universe at the same time. So they are basically fractals of themselves. Yeah. So the Prince of Darkness is seen and experienced as a sentient being, which means that the archetype is an external entity, or is and is not just the figment of the reflection of the image inside of the black mirror that you may want to begin to worship, perhaps. So there is a book written on titled "The Infernal Geometry and the Left-Hand Path: The Magical System of the Nine Angles," which was also investigated by William Ramsey, investigative journalist who did an extensive investigation on that as well. So have a look at that. Okay, so what is the infernal geometry and the left-hand path? It's based on the magical system of the nine angles. Toby Chappell, Michael Aquino, and Stephen E. Flowers have contributed to this book, of course. And so the overview of this book is a comprehensive guide to the history and practices of angular magic. All these people that talk about angels, they're all angles of the light. Details the development of the magical system of the nine angles by the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set, as well as its internal body, the Order of the Trapezoid, and analyzes the three key rites of angular magic, which is based on Germanic explain here, die elektrischen Vorspelle, the ceremony of the nine angles, and the call to Cthulhu. So explores also historical influence on angular magic, which would be related to John Dee's Enochian magic, as well as Pythagorean number system mysticism, as well as the writings on H.P. Lovecraft, including practical examples, daily practices, and guidance on creating your own rituals. So revealing the magical uses of number and geometry as tools for introspective self-development, etc., etc., etc. The link is at the bottom for you to investigate some more. There's a lot of focus on the Church of Satan, later the Temple of Set. How is it changed in any other way? It's just the same thing all over again. He shows that the system first emerged in the ceremony of the nine angles, written by Michael Aquino and published through Anton Zandor Lavey's The Satanic Rituals book. He explores the historical influences on angular magic, including the Pythagorean numbers system, like I've just said. Okay, so three rites. Angular magic is also to do with rune symbology and sigils, etc. All right, then there's also another book called The Global Death Cult, which was written by William Ramsey, The Order of the Nine Angles, where he explains that the Order of the Nine Angles was a secretive group with far-reaching plans to influence societies around the world. And he goes into much deeper detail than I would want to do here on YouTube. So we move back to the book. All right, so he talks here about the Prince of Darkness. Everyone knows that. And then he also talks about the right-hand path is perceived as a path in which there is union with the material reality or nature. And the left-hand path is seen as union with the universe. So let me say that again. Right-hand path is received as a path of, or perceived as a path of, in which there is union with the material reality. All right? That's where the subjective and objective thing comes in. While the left-hand path is seen as union with the universe, which is still anchored into the material reality, because the universe does not exist, in the sense that they are explaining it. Okay? And the left hand considers the position of humanity as it is. It takes into account the manifest and deep-seated desire of each human being to be an actor within his or her world, end quote. Quote again, the pleasure and pain made possible by independent existence are seen as something to be embraced and as most reasonable signs of the highest, most notable destiny possible for humans to attain. So you should feel blessed because you got pain. That's the left-hand path. Then you know you've been touched by the Prince of Darkness or whatever. Okay. Do I need to say that you mustn't be bluffed? My side note is both are in opposition of each other. Both paths are still locked into the same realm, be it in the pretend space according to them, or inside of the forest worshipping gods. It's the same thing, or whatever else is hanging on a tree. The belief is still held in the direction of annihilation of the self, meaning you lose yourself inside of these paths to never actually be able to get out, because that's what it's all about. Whatever is given into the material realm, worshipped in the material realm, holds you to the material realm, will not let you be able to get out of the material realm. Okay. In the last video that I made about the image is like cut glass. It is based on the angles of the focus of yourself within the system overlay. All right. Like I said, you may have to listen to this a few times. Okay, so you lose yourself inside of these paths. Duality is a condition of master and slave, like I've said, or causes an effect. Objectification, being slave to something, or master, being the one that actions out on you what you must become subjected to. Just keep understanding this and you'll be able to get it, okay? So what is the right path? The right path is not a path. It is really inside a life, an existence. So it is not a path, it is a way of life. An existence is within. It is an alignment with your spirit, soul, mind, and body within the presence of the original creative force that is outside of this realm, and was not the creator of this showcase, amphitheater, circus. Okay. Keep that in mind. But it is also understood in slivers of insight and wisdom and love and good deeds, as you know. The more you nurture the self without hurting yourself and another, if you can love yourself without the causing hurt to another, then it is not vanity. There's a lot of confusion about that, it seems to be in the world. The more you feel that presence in your life, the more you ask, the more you look for things to be thankful for, the more you will see things to be thankful for, the more you will receive things to be thankful for. The more you look at yourself with love, the more you will experience yourself to feel love. The more you experience yourself to feel love, the more you will experience yourself to be more whole. That is what the channel is all about, to show you that. All right, so why else are there such forces to actively annihilate individual and creative thinking, as an example, is because of the fact that if you dare to become whole and independent and completely separate from the material realm, along with all of its weirdness that beams all around you, then you are seen as something that is rogue, and then it will try and take you to, it'll try and even you out. But you are able to overcome that, and you are able to achieve greater distance from it, because the more you are experiencing that, the more you are able to go within, the more you are able to become stronger, the more you are able to have a greater frequency above it. That is how it works. Okay. So the left-hand path, back to the book, the left-hand path offers two more criteria: an effort towards deification of the self, speaks for itself. This, obviously, the secret desire to be God is what they all want, is to deify themselves. I'll give you the paths here so you can look at it. There they are. Self-deification, that's what they work on. Number two, individualism, which they see, which if you are individual, then they see that they think that you are not part of the tribe or the sheep herd, and therefore you must be evil. Or in this case, if you are striving to become individual within yourself, then you are obviously on the enlightened path of becoming closer to becoming a god. So either way, there's some misconception and understanding of of actually being individual within yourself. So you need to establish that within yourself. You cannot let these things dictate or even what I say influence you. You need to figure it out for yourself. Okay. The second thing is also based on something very interesting here, which I've forgotten to add in. The part of becoming a deity, or the desire to be God, and the practice of antinomianism. Antinomianism means going against the grain, so to speak. However, some work hard to identify themselves with cultural norm of evil or impurities, which means then they become adversarial. And antinomial means that the more evil you can look like or behave like, the more you will become good. Okay. So this then becomes practiced as what is evil is good and what is good is evil. Okay. So doing certain vile acts against certain humans are then seen as actually good, right? So I rest my case there. Okay, so here we come, the self-deification, attainment of an enlightened or awakened, and is relative to immortality or godlike productions. Individualism, enlightened intellect gives you the individual and not collective. Okay, initiation, which means you are enlightened and strong for the desired state of evolution, which we are not animals. Okay. But they consider humanity to evolve like animals, okay, of self by way of magic. Magic is like toothpaste. Magic, growing the self by way of left-hand path, seeing themselves using their own will intuitively or through spiritual technology designed to cause the universe around them to conform to their self-willed patterns. All right. Now you understand where the process of objectivity and subjectivity come from. Okay, so my side note, I think it becomes self-explanatory when you do find the book that it is hard, that is quite a hard sell for people to join the left-hand path, to ultimately join in with the Temple of Set or whatever it is, to probably, you know, pump in a lot of money there. So who knows what it's basically doing right now, except to get more people so that they become cannon fodder, like I've been explaining all these years. Okay, so this antinomianism is the only real reason to make use of satanic imagery at all. And recent history has shown that this imagery, along with connected to National Socialism, which, remember now, like I've said, this book was written in the 80s, and refers to the past as the last war that there was. Here you go, in case you didn't know. Yeah, this is the next chapter. This is all the first chapter, basically the biggest cell. Okay, so they talk here about socialism is unmatched as a way to arouse the sense of taboo and forbidden in culture. So that's based on that. Therefore, is an indispensable usefulness of this imagery, which becomes the root focus for things such as diabolical in character. Okay, so now I've decided to really skip through most of the extra jargon of pages. And I'll be explaining to you the Order of the Trapezoid, which is based on the website, and then I'll come back to the last parts of the book for you. Okay, so the Order of the Trapezoid is a magical concept, magical body that exists beyond the limitations of time and space. I'll leave that for you to read while I'm reading to you my findings from it. So is this not also the Merkaba, like I've just mentioned earlier on? The same beliefs are structured around it, like a vehicle, a thing that takes you through, like Star Trek. So H.P. Lovecraft wrote of an order of the shining trapezohedron in the novel Haunter of the Dark. Anton LaVey conceived or stole, obviously, the idea. Let's just be frank here, and created the Order of the Trapezoid as the secret core of the Church of Satan. I mean, because it sounds really weird and cool at the same time. So in 1983, Michael Aquino reconstructed the order as a working order and added chivalry to it, obviously, as a result of now the famous Wewelsburg working like WW on October 1982. The working was conducted in the hell in excuse me. Let me just pause here. Okay, so the working was conducted as in the hall of the slain, or Valhalla, which they spell with a W, of the Wewelsburg or Burg, a castle used by Heinrich Himmler as the magical headquarters of his own Black Order of the Trapezoid, issued by Aquino on January 30th, 1983. The Grand Master defined the order as such, quote, "The Order of the Trapezoid is an order of the knighthood characterized by strict personal honor and faithfulness to the quest for the Grail. The Order of the Trapezoid is a knighthood in that its members are pledged to traditional chivalric virtues as appropriate to each situation encountered. By honorous meant a sense of justice, ethics, and responsibility prior to personal comfort, convenience, and advantage." Okay, end quote. You can read while I'm busy here. So this honor is known by one's faithful, next quote, "faithfulness to the quest for the Grail, which is the self, soul, or psyche made perfect through conscious refinement and exercise of the will, which is mental, which is material. Attainment of the Grail results in transformation of the individual into a state of dynamic existence energized by the psyche, not by the physical body derived from the material universe. Hence, the Order of the Trapezoid is the gate to the psyche-centric immortality beyond physical death." End quote. My side note on this is above quote is this major contract that has obviously locked all the souls in place, which we know, and perhaps this was the purpose to begin with before they died. Their souls and spirits would be locked into it to be kept going forever and ever in a state of buffering, one could say. Remember, the lesser key of Solomon was built a temple of the same premise of souls and spirits being the stones for it to exist within. And much like warriors do, also erect little temples and towers to see if how it comes down afterwards. It's always about erecting it and breaking it down for the action purposes. Pretty much like a flood washing away an anthill. Manipulating time and space for immortality using psychic powers to do so, but pledge your soul in doing it so that you can also do things and get away with it, of course, because, you know, what's good is bad and what's bad is good. So the dimensions held in place, the trap for the torus to function. We wanted to know what was the creator or the influencers of torus and the entire system in its place. You're looking at the people that are doing it as we speak. So this is a major card that if removed and exposed like we're doing right now, it is something that will tumble the entire house of cards down as we speak, as I speak. So remember that the skin of the torus is made up of dark crystal material, not obviously literally, but it appears to be dark and crystal-like, of the obsidian nature because it permeates light into the system overlay, which is, of course, the end product. That is what you're experiencing right now. Everyone fighting to get into this space, but scared shitless, obviously, when they experience the void of the luminiferous ether as we speak. which is that video on elixir. From the website, to give a more contemporary insight as what the Order of the Trapezoid is, I've got a few excerpts that I've taken from the site itself, and I will be citing a few parts here and there, and the link will be at the description box. The Order of the Trapezoid is an order of knighthood dedicated to the Prince of Darkness and protecting the Black Flame, or the Dark Crystal. So, Order of the Trapezoid was first formally introduced by Anton LaVey into the December 1970 issue of the Church of Satan's newsletter, The Cloven Hoof, where it was described as the board of directors and security staff of the church. Right, the idea of what the order signified morphed at various times, always with a focus on its vital role as caretaker of the hidden tradition behind the visible tradition, exemplified first by the Church of Satan and then later by the Temple of Set. The Order of the Trapezoid was finally given a definite form by Michael Aquino, Dr. Michael Aquino, at the time High Priest of Set in 1982, and took its place as one of the three oldest still existent orders or areas of specifications under the leadership and teachings of a Grand Master within the Temple of Set, end quote. The mission. The Order of the Trapezoid is a chivalric order of knighthood dedicated to the Prince of Darkness, as I've said, and protection of the Black Flame. That's what they bring in every time. They kind of announce it every time. It's like a repeat, so you get it in your head. So what the Order of the Trapezoid is and does, these resources reveal something of the sense of Runa, i.e. the essence of the mysterious that lurks hidden within. Consecrated by the Prince of Darkness in his image as Wotan Helljaeger of the One Eye, the Order of the Trapezoid is a chivalric order within the Temple of Set, and ad nauseum, repeat. Okay, that's not in there. I just added that in. So its members are adept black magicians who have sworn fealty beyond death to the spirit of their filia, or guiding shadow self. So worshipping the self is worshipping the shadow as well. That's why Cthulhu was such a smash hit. These knights are dedicated to the quest for the Grail by seeking the angular mysteries of the trapezoid, in other words, the angles of light, partaking of the Black Flame, which obviously has a lot of weird rituals involved, and achieving a highly dynamic state of development known as Valhalla. Next quote, the Order of the Trapezoid has many areas, focus, and experimentation, ranging from the esoteric traditions of the Northern Europe to mad lab experiments and the martial arts and a neo-mythology. This is all put in there, okay? I'm just quoting from it. And mathematics are gateways, or are seen as gateways, altered states and higher dimensions. Can you imagine throwing technology into that, which is where they're going, most likely, or where they are now, or cybermancy. All of these and more are united by these fourfold approach described more fully in the introduction to the Order's mysteries. Okay. Next quote on the Magus Nemo. So, decades after they were written, Lovecraft's tale would be inspired a creative iconoclastic showman, a magus who proclaimed himself the Black Pope. Gosh, I wonder where that came from. And Sin Eater, and gave the late 60s and early 70s a name, Indulgence. So that was the name, Indulgence. Okay, Anton Sandor LaVey ushered the Lovecraftian mythos into the ritual chambers and postmodern culture of the Church of Satan. So it's a culture change too. Seeing the correlation between the strange angles of Lovecraft and the negative architecture, negative as in the negative image of a picture, they call it the negative architecture, described in the Lovecraft's book, the La Forest's houses that KILL, Levey formulated the aesthetic function of this geometry in the greater and lesser laws of the trapezoid, in which certain angles that were harmful to most people would be beneficial to those who were properly initiated into their mysteries. The latter was visually demonstrated in the photographs and the Mortensen's book, The Command to Look, which we were discussing a little bit later. The latter was, like I said, it was and verbalized a century earlier when Immanuel Kant likened the experience of the sublime to standing atop a high cliff that simultaneously attracts us to move closer to its ledge and repels us to scramble for safety. End quote. Next quote, Order of the Trapezoid is the board of directory and security staff of the church. I think that was mentioned. I'll go in there so you can see. Yeah. Okay, and its members chosen by appointment according to the special abilities and attributes of each. Much like super soldiers, right? The mind control continues. All priests and priestesses are automatically admitted into the order, although identities of most members of the order are unknown, even to each other. Members of the governing or grand council of the trapezoid are known only by the high priest, who solicits their aid when required, much like what they did during October. They're all busy little bees. Although Levey grasped the aesthetic correlations of the trapezoid in Lovecraft's tales and the Weimar-era expressionism of pre-war Germany, don't you love the dramatic explaining? The Levey-centered political organizations of the Order of the Trapezoid kept it from becoming a proper order within the Church of Satan. The formula remained a thought experiment throughout the demise of the Church. Do you remember what I mentioned to you about thought experiment? Thought experiment is a way to exact subjective and objective mind control. Okay. So if the people that are put into this order are also subjected to objections that are given to them via esoteric rituals and knowledge, then they are also mind controlled. That is just a side note. So the formula remained a thought experiment, like I said, throughout the demise of the church and the ascension of the Temple of Set, where it was alternatively used to designate the Council of the Nine and the Mysteries. Next quote. In here. Aquino performed the rite at Wewelsburg to recapture the positive elements of this romantic stream from the place where the dark arts of the north were last attempted. So he just went to the place historically and started dowsing and tried to pick up stuff. It's much like what they do. They just do the same thing over and over. And then took some crystals with and then absorbed whatever energy was there. It's what they can do. There he combined the stream with that of the Lovecraftian expressionism, a genre with which he was familiar, having previously served at Levey's left-hand man, as Levey's left-hand man in the Church of Satan, and having written the Ceremony of the Nine Angles and the Call of Cthulhu as the contributions to the satanic rituals in 1972. And the marriage of German Romanticism with Lovecraftian expressionism was a powerful one indeed, perhaps even too powerful. End quote. Next quote. Dr. Aquino reestablished the Order of the Trapezoid as a chivalric order, we know that already. And the next part here, which is also very interesting, notice that word, Polaris. For the first time since it was conceived, the Order of the Trapezoid had become a working organization with a working formula. 4 years later, the Grand Master Chair of the order was passed to Dr. Stephen Edgeworth Flowers, with his very fancy name, Edmund Drayton of the Rune Guild, the scholar of Germanic magical traditions, because he knew a lot of that and because he comes from there, and it was useful, and author of numerous books of European magical systems. During his 9 years tenure as Grandmasters, Dr. Flowers developed the Indo-European northern roots of the order, articulating its historical sources and establishing a rigorous methodology for awakening traditional systems. I'll leave it there. And so it continues. The work of Dr. Flowers gave rise to the particular school of mysticism within the order. The school linked concrete accomplishments in objective reality to the knowledge of the deeper mysteries when transcended rational thought and sense perception. Okay, so he's just added that part in, obviously. Much later, though. Okay, then the book was written, the Black Runa. And their mission is the work, or the quest, is to work of latter grandmasters and other knights and dames has continued to shape the order and foster its collective understanding of its own deeper mysteries, but at the same time also manipulating people. This has included such influential order-wide projects as weekend-long workshops studying runes and the 9 angles, and the compilations of an order Necronomicon, including our own rituals and theoretical works in the realm of neo-mythology. And we'll leave it there, and the rest you can read for yourself. You can read all of that stuff for yourself. I'll put the link at the top there, or at the bottom there for you. All right, so it's all about psychocentric immortality beyond physical death. So becoming a god and living beyond that and being a god, that's the race. That's always been the race. That's why they needed a 65% soul, spirit, giving into whatever trauma, so they could absorb that energy, so that they could use it to keep building their little trapezoid time machine. That's really the nuts, and that's the very rough version of it. The trapezoid is the central mystery of the order, and the Runa, the essence of mysteries as it presents the hidden examples, as you now know. The trapezoid is a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional shadow of facets of existence known and explored by only a few. It is a prism and a gate, most importantly, and it is the mystery. So there's another few excerpts here which are not here. You would have to go into the links, which you'll find eventually, and resources and so on. A lot of reading material if you go into all of it. All right. And I've found a few notes which I've just added into it. So one of the notes are from which is a letter written by Sir Don Webb, Master of the Trapezoid, which is obviously an excerpt here. Quote, "One of the most notorious parts of the Temple of Set is the Order of the Trapezoid." This is what he says. And he just repeats the same information about a knighthood dedicated to the honor of the 2 beasts, Aleister Crowley and Michael Aquino. So he actually mentions it there. Its primary expression is Germanic occultism, and its secondary language is the mythos of Lovecraft. The order was founded in the darkest of the places, the Hall of the Dead at Himmler's Castle. Sir Don Webb, that's his name, who's written this. Next quote of the letter: "They practiced a simple and effective self-deification magic, of course, and did not couple it with the virtuous ethics. They are forever the sign in history that you cannot give the powers of darkness to humans that do not place these powers around a core that believes in freedom and diversity, and also believes that this core is not only part and parcel of the gift of the Prince of Darkness, but that fighting for freedom actually makes the black flame burn more brighter on the earth." It's his words, okay, and his experience. And so during his stay in the temple, he says, quote, "I have seen both Jewish and black grandmasters of the order. All races of mankind take their turns as victims and tormentors, yet all humans can not only be better humans, they can be semi-divine. He says humans can be semi-divine, but they can be fully divine. Remember now, there's a difference now, subject and object. You're the subject, or, you're my subject. And I am your king, so I am the object of your desire. Remember that. If you do not realize that making yourself into a god also means that you are making yourself into a demon, then you must flee the dark path. As these words, end quote. Next part, he writes here, what was the purpose of the temple of Set? They are always going to tell you it's for the greater good. That's my side note. And for personal self-enrichment towards personal immortality, or something like that. A short excerpt here, consider this to be the part of the floor plan. Like I've said, again, another part of it is the Order of the Trapezoid has roots in the work of Aleister Crowley, 20th century German occultism, and other sources. Right. And then to draw in some historical references, you can also look for the Khazarian roots, which I think it relates to the following section here, where the same man writes, when the Hyksos ruled Egypt, they brought ideas of horse culture and honor. Although the Hyksos were not Indo-Europeans, they did bring the Indo-European notion of rule by cavalry elite to the Nile Valley. All right, they basically destroyed Egypt completely to the ground. This led to changes in Egyptian thinking, Egyptian thinking in the earlier dynasties. It saw the emergence of a military elite, the Mari Anu, who considered honor as a key to personal immortality. God, they really are striving that. A method of thinking that Egyptologist Jan Asserman has described as a theology of will. All right, so like I said, the Hyksos, you need to look for it. The Hyksos, a mysterious group of foreign invaders, conquered the Nile Delta around 1638 BC and remained in power until 1530 BC. But written records of the dynasties are pretty much wiped out or maybe hidden. They say scarce. And I'm actually thinking that there's a reference between them and the Khazars. So there's a link of that in the description. And if you need to really investigate it, make sure that you do it well. Okay, then the next quote is from Sir Toby Chappell. Quote here, the first use of the sacred trapezoid in Western magic was the Freemasons' apron, proportions, obviously, and reflected the values of the name of Jehovah. The yod is the base, the two hairs, and the side of the vav is on the top. Sir Albert Pike traced the apron somewhat fancifully to the white sheepskin worn by the priests of Jupiter Ammon. The Freemasons, whose network of secrets and beliefs in equality and brotherhood brought about the American and French revolutions, are a prototype of the order. Then he writes here, quote, we likewise believe in the equality of members, the use of fraternal bonds to achieve worldly power, and the long-term importance of a secular human freedom. Obviously, we can see how that's going. Anyway, some more here. Quote, Valhalla is both the motto of the Order of the Trapezoid and the name of the chamber at the Wewelsburg Castle, which we now know. The word Valhalla is the German form of the name of the Hall of the Slain. Again, think about it. The Hall of the Slain is the same as when you're slain, you've passed on. That means you're in spirit form. It's the same as the Solomon's Key, where the temple is built on spirits, those people that have passed away. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing. It's just called something else. If Valhalla is the hall of the slain, or the slain not those who have been deceased, and if the order is or was built on the halls of the slain, then is this just not just another lesser key of Solomon? Just think about that. And to conclude the ending of this material on the website, as I said, links are provided for you to explore to your heart's content. I will now go towards the rest of the book. So I'm switching over now. Okay. The following chapters in the booklet Black Runa had introduced in the first chapter, where the left-hand path is all about, where the magical workings in terms of the universes according to them. And then chapter 2 is about the chalice, mysteries of the Grail, which they believe exist, which they're looking for outside of themselves, which they'll never find. But, you know, it's good. It's an adventure. The symbol for the chalice is based on the spiral vortex, which you'll see now. There it is. Okay. Or the belief that the Holy Grail exists. Okay. Because as you ascend up the spire, so is the alchemical symbol of water. So they believe, here you are, you're ascending, you're going up. And then where do you go? So now here's what it really means, okay? This is a water symbol in alchemy. If you go through this process, you're going up, backwards, and bouncing back forward again, back down again. You cannot leave here because it's closed. So this is basically to keep you constantly in up and down motion, up and down. This lets you go out, invoking something to be drawn back in. So why is that? Okay, that is what I'm questioning, based on what I'm seeing and what my sense is telling me. All right. So he writes here, so, okay, so that's basically it. They remark of this as a symbol for essential nourishment or ecstasy. I can see why it's ecstasy, obviously. It's fun to come back and forth. Actually works on the consciousness. The chalice symbol symbolizes something from which essential ecstasies are obtained. All right. Its standard shape indicates a spiral vortex of energy. Let me just go back so you can see it. DNA. But whereas the chalice properly symbolizes these things, the trapezoid can actually do them. It might be said that any trapezoid is the Holy Grail. Right, so now you see why there's such a desire to get into one of those tiles. They just really want to live in there, because they are too afraid to actually go out of it. And that's why they don't want this place to change. They don't want it to change. They are resisting heavily. Okay, then the next chapter, and these are very short chapters, on the way of Wotan and the left-hand path, and we're sort of close towards the end, so I will conclude this. Third chapter is about Odinism, or the way of Wotan and the left-hand path, which you can see. Okay, because of the mythology of how life and death and rebirth has been documented, the Odin path, or the way of Wotan, of the ancient Germans, the only path historically examples of a national school of the left-hand path. All right, so because the information, the Norse information on Odin had existed prior to this, they had decided that they would go for that because it depicts what their journey is pretty much set out for them. You know, I mean, why create your own journey? Let's just copy someone else's mythology and journey. I mean, it's easier, right? Like a print. So in hell, they live in static state, being slowly absorbed into the cosmos of Yggdrasil, which means they're absorbed into the tree of life, or the Sephiroth. They consider that to be the most common path for the majority of humanity, whereas those who chose the left-hand path are said to become reborn in the path of becoming. Doesn't that chalice tell you that this is basically what it is? Reborn continuously, over and over and over, bouncing into the water, getting rinsed around, and then shoved back down again. Okay. And if you've chosen the path of left-hand path, you are set to become reborn into the path of becoming. So reincarnation is a big deal for them, or to live actually forever inside of a computer might even be better for them. Which means that you never cease to have form, nor do you have any form to seize. The constant motion breaks you into fractured parts. This is why things are so psychotic. Some people are really psychotic who have been going in these things for a long time. I think it fractures the consciousness quite badly. Here's that book, the Command to Look book, written in 1986. Not the book itself, but the same author writes his notes on it, obviously. He writes that the Command to Look was one of William Mortison's most influential and sought-after books, and has been out of print for 50 years. He's reproduced it here in full. This book includes an essay by Michael Noyen, I can't pronounce his surname, Moynihan, yeah, there you go, on how its images influence the occult, lesser magic, on the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey. He's like a cheap stain. He makes notes that this book was filed under photographic techniques in the University of Texas when he was looking for the book, and also a copy of it in the Humanities Research Center, along with the entire personal library of Aleister Crowley. Funny how that is. According to the in the order to hold attention, that is a big thing. Okay, here's a theory on how it works. See why they have forced the understanding of subjection and perception as participation and objection. Okay, right? It doesn't make sense, I know, but that's what he's presenting there. Okay, so in the order, okay, to make the viewer see, he or she must at once be able to recognize something basically and essentially compelling about the subject, which is a person, of course. For all practical purposes, this recognition must occur simultaneously with impact. Therefore, the types of subject interests must be as broad as emotional appeal as well. So people can look at your photo, look at your picture, and they can really think very heavy, intentional thoughts about you while they do what they are doing to create a connection with the image. This is the last video that I've made right before this one. So you'll understand now what I mean by explaining the image itself. Okay, so on the side note, like I've just said, is about that when you look at something and it worries you immensely, it literally triggers you in every fiber of your body for you to release a certain frequency from your body for it to actually feed that impression on that picture. It doesn't matter what picture it is. If you want to post pictures of where you live and flowers and animals and things like that, and you derive pleasure from it, then whoever looks at it is also feeling the pleasure from what you are presenting for them. But normally, nasty stuff really do a lot more, and things that are controversial, extremely controversial. Okay, I cannot say that other word. Okay. So, yeah, the book is about the SEX, sentiment and wonder. And that normally goes with that material that I've just talked about, those type of materials. These are basic premises for magical formula. I don't need to really go into detail here. I think you get the idea. Pleasuring and so on. I hope kind of this makes sense for you. I'm just going to move on from that book, from that page, because there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm not, there's images here that I don't want you to stare too deeply at, because it means that sentiment and wonder. In any case, it is up to you. If you want to become subjected to stuff like that, it's your business as well. Just be warned. The next thing to take into account is that there is such a thing as luminiferous ether, which obviously penetrates from the outside into the torus through the black obsidian crystal, like I've mentioned. And remember that whatever you're using when you're projecting into the system around you comes back at you. If you are trying to send it to someone, it may hurt that person, but it's now coming back to you. There is just no more, sending it out to actually hurt that person. It just returns straight back to that person, especially if you're in a much higher level than the work that they're doing to you or things that are happening around you. Okay. So next page, there's some next pages here, which I'll leave here. It talks about the practices and all that stuff. And then he speaks about the greater black magic is used using these principles. The law of the trapezoid comes in. They believe that the only way to enter into the trapezoid is by way of using these extreme focuses on emotional, sexual, and mental energy or focus. They may use certain themes to excite themselves for that purpose. It's broadly based on the participation of the focus on what you want. Trapezoidal ruinology is the next little chapter. It's a short one. It really speaks about the author's own understanding of the order of the trapezoid and trying to clarify for himself how it works. That runes are based on his findings. Obviously, a great deal of esoteric fusion with Odinism. Too vast and too much to explore right now. Otherwise, we'll sit here until tomorrow. The rune symbol for the peace sign at the time of war period, also very interesting. I wanted to share that with you. Is quite interesting. It means death, and that means to be put to peace, rest in peace. I'll show you now where the image is. I'll bring it up in a second. That's what it means. It means death, but it actually means rest in peace. So the trapezoid cinema, which is, here's more of that, obviously. It repeats it a lot here. Here's the rune. If you look on the image, here's the rune origins of the peace sign. You guys remember this little peace sign symbol? There you go. The little peace sign. It means death. And here's what it was used for, propaganda posters. They wanted to make a statement here when they were going through their drama that they put that in there to say, and then there will be, this will be put to peace or something, into peace, at peace. Then there's another chapter called Trapezoidal Cinema, which I've left this part out because it really over explains mostly everything in the previous. And here's a new one. Where LaVey was inspired by the likes of an old black and white, he was inspired by old black and white movies based on ritual crafty movies, because his uncle Tony during the 1940s had come across all of those movies and footage. That's why his little nephew became involved in it as well. Okay, so then there's another guy here called Austin, and you see symbol there, Austin Osman Spare, who was an artist actually, and I think he was just exploited for his artistic ability. That's my opinion. Austin Osman Spare lived in 1886 to 1956, and he was Aleister Crowley's contemporary. And the snippet is unusual perspective characteristics of some of Spare's work is due to a coordination of time and space. The only way I can do this, i.e. coordinate time and space, is by a reorientation and the use of two perspectives simultaneously. So this is quote, end quote. It is like looking at a person from two different places at the same time. Okay. One of Spare's aesthetic theories is that through attenuation, horizontal, perpendicular, or oblique, which is the trapezoid, There occurs a natural emphasis on the rhythm of aesthetic value inherent in form, but usually obscured. By combining two or more perspectives in one object, he hoped to reveal its hidden meaning and to evolve its later power. The power of the image was also erotic, of course. Next chapter, pretty much magical manipulation. Snippet here, Anton LaVey's ritual called the Elektrischen Voorspellen, the electrical preludes. In the satanic rituals, he said that the rite he as was intended alter an existing social climate and establish far-reaching changes. It is in this book where it explains how they were working with it. The image of performing versions of the greater black magical workings to influence the German body of politics was definitely an intriguing thing to try. Images in all of its details, one of the chief concerns of the Order of the Trapezoid. This image is also echoed through LaVey's discussions on Yetzirahs, or the seven towers of Satan, 6 of them trapezoidal form, intended to serve as a powerhouse from whence a satanic magician could beam his will to the descendants of Adam, if he wanted to, and influence human events in the outside world. Both of these features the idea of influencing general social and human environment by means of greater black magic. I think there it is, out of the horse's mouth. Certain people used certain sigil magic sigil magic to bring a certain previous presidential person into being using a little green frog. Greater black magic aimed at causing effects in the objective universe must, in order to be most reliable, be supplemented with lesser black magical techniques. Obviously, lesser black magical was used by the Nazis. Nazis, we have ample subjects of the study in the practices of their then National Socialist parties that were working through a lot of social involvement. From the black magical perspective, these workings could be seen as efforts to manipulate the masses to do the will of the black magical oligarchy. It is interesting to note that the theme of the mindless mass or automation, organic or inorganic, which does the will of the master, is one that has always fascinated them. I don't think it's just them. I think it's just fascinated most of these creatures that have been practicing this work in these orders. Famous film of that period with the column of Rabbi Lowe, Dr. Caligari Caesari, and the Rotwang's Robotics Ultima Futura. Put the picture up for you. Side note, as much as the material has been written at the time of the 80s, like I've said, it is also predominantly a great focus on the occult of that period of the Nazi war. But do not obviously let your mind get stuck there. You need to also look at it for the current event, current timeline as well. You must look at the current as well. It is exactly the same, it's just repeated and become much more emphasized in the way that it's being presented, and perhaps a little bit more skilled in how it's being manipulated and, hidden. Research clearly shows that the esoteric right and left dichotomy was posited by Rudolf Steiner, which is something else that you need to take note of as well. Go past the ceremony days. It was posited. Okay, so research clearly shows that the esoteric right and left dichotomy was posited by Rudolf Steiner, Mr. Shiny Pants, and was carried through by Walter Johannes Stein, the focus on certain universalistic socio-economic theories, such as the story about the blood of Christ being absorbed into Golgotha, and so spurred an economy that is directed from a universal point of view, predicated on disillusion and national frontiers. This world economy was to be directed by a nebulous body called the Order of Christ, presumably dedicated band of friendly, hardworking government bureaucrats, which are like the likes of IRS and UN. Stein held that the creation of the system of world economy was the real mission of the Saxon people. Stein was in fact brought to England in 1933 by British business magnate Daniel Nicol Dunlap to aid in the operation of the World Power Conference, later known as the World Energy Conference. In England, he continued to work acting as an advisor to Winston Churchill, who became a patient of Stein, who was also a homeopathic practitioner. And then you can see how things deteriorated from there. So the aim was to establish an economic space or Lebensraum to measure it with economic power. Like what you're seeing right now, what they're trying to push for is the same thing. It's always the same thing. It just doesn't, it doesn't matter who it is, in which country it is the same sickness that keeps repeating itself because they're all doing it through a little lens that repeats and projects the same program out over and over and over. Okay, this economic system would then become fully independent and self-sufficient, remaining apart from the rest of the world economy. Each of these economic theories are substantiated in the esoteric rite, sees a one world economy with no national borders, like what we're seeing right now. Then esoterics left sees individuated national economics functioning in isolation, which is like, I don't know which is worse, because both are basically emulations of one another. One wants to keep it all for themselves in isolation. The other one wants to have, wants to spread it out and have zero borders, and they're all the same, like I said. So on the last chapter, we're coming towards a conclusion. The difference to understand that the meaning of the word sacrifice in Latin means sacrificium, something which has been made sacred or something which has been separated out from the profane. There is supposedly a choice in doing so, and I'll leave it at that because you go deeper into this, they kind of want to say it's okay to do what they do because it's not so bad. Okay, so let it be known one more time that all the works on this channel has been explained and even experienced without such bullshit as what I have been reviewing to you right now. This is a major card that slots the entire house of cards together, which we have just literally taken out of the pack. I don't need to tell you that when these things are exposed the way that they are, that it will definitely create a collapsing of a few towers and some very unhappy people who will perhaps have a problem with their empires that they've been magically creating, much like what they've been trying to do over the last few months to mostly everyone that are in their spirited self-caring place within. The rest of the book I want to leave to you to decide what you want to do with it. I can just leave the information right here with you. I don't need to tell you that when things are exposed the way that they are, that the material and the energy clears up and this becomes broken and dissolved. So I want to conclude to you that the Order of the Trapezoid, along with the Temple of Set, is now broken down and the temple and the tower has collapsed. And I will leave it with you until next time. Bye.